So without further ado, I want to introduce to you our presenter, William Daniels. Since February 2011, he served as the official spokesperson for the United States Attorney's Office, Middle District of Florida. Previously, from 1998 to 2011, he served as the Law Enforcement Coordinator, Community Resource Specialist for the district, covering 35 counties. He currently serves as an advisor to the U.S. Attorney's Office on law enforcement and community-related matters, public affairs, media relations, assisting in the coordination of specialized law enforcement community-based initiatives, and he also acts as a liaison federal, state, and local law enforcement, government, and state organizations. He currently serves as the co-chair for the U.S. Attorney's Office Civil Rights Hate Crimes Working Group. They develop training and programs to improve intercultural dialogue and working relationships among diverse groups. He's also a former sworn law enforcement officer, acting field training officer, and a member of the Special Narcotics and Felony Enforcement Unit. He is a certified law enforcement instructor. He's also served as a national adjunct instructor to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. And I do have to mention there are some of the senior instructors here from the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. If you could stand up and just say, oh. Yes, we have Mr. Thomas Bergamine.
Yes.
Did I say that? Bergamine.
Yes.
And he is here as well. So we thank you for participating today. There's a long bio, and if you want more information about Mr. William Daniels, what he's going to do in an excellent workshop, so I want to go ahead and give him the floor. Thank you. Mr. Daniels?
Good afternoon, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This is not going to be as long as you think. And the reason is because the panel have touched, I'm going to take it off my side. I'm going to take that slide out, I'm going to take that slide out, I'm going to take that slide out, because they hit it. They really hit a lot of it. The other thing is that I had an opportunity to work with Sheriff Glover since I arrived here in the district in 1998, and he was actually the sheriff. And so we had an opportunity to do a lot of great things in the community together on the DOJ initiatives that dealt with not only the enforcement side of violent offenders, but also dealing with these talking about prevention, intervention, and treatment, our drug education and youth programs. They have one of the model programs here that became a national model around the entire country. So we've had a great opportunity to, as I was telling Sheriff Williams on the way out, you guys have a framework. You really do have a framework to do a lot of the things. And I've been in law enforcement now, local and federal side, for about 21 years, including my street days as a cop. And all too many other ways be to just be cut to the quick and kind of blunt. Glad to see Lexi guys here. I had the opportunity to work with Rosanna Mora on the state and local law enforcement program, domestic terrorism, hate crime training program, where we took about face and civil rights thing across the entire country doing domestic terrorism. And so that is something that continues to live on. So I'm just going to talk about today. I have a few things that I'm going to add, punctuate some of the things that they talk about. I'm going to give you some tips and tools. I'll be the first person to tell you I'm not an expert. Anyone who walks in the room and says I am an expert, be very cautious. I have had the benefit and the pleasure of being able to travel and work with people, some brilliant minds who looked at specific issues and situations around the world. My travels have allowed me to be able to look at departments, communities, and agencies, and concepts from around the country. I've done some work in Costa Rica, Caribbean, and Africa that hopefully we'll get a chance to talk a little bit about. So I'm not going to bore you too much with the details, but we're just going to have some goals today, some pretty basic goals. I want us to kind of, in the amount of data that you've heard here, and a little bit I'm going to give you, in addition to that, is we just want to kind of understand the importance of partnerships and achieving public safety. I'm going to show you things that you already know, but hope I can reinforce some things and clarify some misperceptions that the panel talked about as far as how they're misperceiving that is. I want to kind of examine in the short time that we have the impact of diversity on organizations and their constituents. We started out with a great luncheon for those of you who attended with the president of the Florida Bar, really highlighting and punctuating some issues, specifically how it relates to diversity, what diversity is, and the impact that it has. I'm going to drill down on that just a little bit more. And I want to kind of examine some key strategies, tools, and effective practice of high trust leaders. There is no silver bullet. There really is no silver bullet. That said, I will say that no matter where I've gone in the world or in the country, people are essentially the same. Not only are they essentially the same from a DNA perspective, they're essentially the same as far as what they want. They want to be safe. They want to have an opportunity to realize their dream and their human potential. And they want to have some recreation. They want to have some fun. So no matter where I go, whether it be the South or whether it be the North, I'm a Georgia boy. Just come to Jacksonville as a kid all the time. But no matter where I go in the world, whether it be the Caribbean, whether it be Africa, wherever, once I cut through the political structure, once I cut through the religious, once I cut through all the economic barriers, at the end of the day, people still want to think of the same things. And the first priority is to be safe, because I can't realize those other things until I have a level of safety where I feel that I can exercise those other things. So, one of the things that I'm going to talk about a little bit from, I know we're talking about law enforcement and lawyers on both sides of the spectrum here, but I want to talk about the nobility of policing. I think that's something that's under attack. I think that's something that's being challenged. And let me say this, as a former law enforcement officer, rightfully so. Rightfully so. But what I mean by that is when I'm training law enforcement officers and they say, well, the community doesn't trust us. Or they want us to be able to do this, they want us to be able to do that. And I say to my law enforcement officers, what profession do you know that gives you a weapon or multiple weapons, gives you the ability to incarcerate or impede locomotion or take away freedom, to cause bodily harm up to death? So if I go to the doctor, the surgeon, and he puts me under the knife, and he misdiagnoses me, or he takes out the liver when he's only supposed to take out a spleen or a kidney, I'm going to hold him to a high standard. So law enforcement, the profession, given the responsibilities that we have to be held to a high standard. Understood. But what I mean by the nobility of policing is that it is one of the oldest professions, one of the most noblest professions, because law enforcement officers run into areas where other persons flee from. Building, shots fired, what do? Most of us, what do? We run, right? And we often pass a law enforcement officer on the way into that confrontation, right? So it's a noble profession. But there's some things that have happened. It's been referred to by many names: the watchmen, the peacekeepers, the guardians. That is the traditional, some of the oldest terms as for the Good Samaritans, as far as law enforcement. That's some of the attributes that you talk about when you start talking about a law enforcement or a police officer. But some things have happened that we've gone from that image to this image. We've moved from guardian to warrior, not only in perception, but also in practice. Great report, I didn't include it in here, great report done by the RAND Corporation a couple of years ago, I think, about the changing of resources right after 9/11, as far as the millions of dollars that went specifically from communities to agencies, as far as the focus. Okay. In this district, I used to handle a program for the Department of Justice called the Weed and Seed Initiative. And the initiative was to go into communities that were in disrepair, high violent crime, economic disparities, blight, focus on violent organizations or offenders affecting those areas, but also to work with prevention and treatment, neighborhood restoration, community policing, and problem solving. Okay? That was the standard for the 80s and the 90s. After 9/11, that began to shift. And we began to see more militarization of law enforcement. That is a common, a typical response. Anytime you're in a crisis mode, you're fighting, you're being attacked, you often go to that often extreme. One of the issues that caused our mindset to change and our perception to change for law enforcement is that we never reset totally. And so now what you're hearing calling back into practice is some of the older traditional, when I say traditional, I mean the community policing practices, the getting out the engagement that some of the panel was talking about. It's not rocket science, it really isn't. It's not rocket science. So one of the things we talk about in nobility of policing is we have to talk about what our foundation is. our core values. And our foundation has to be built upon service, justice, and fundamental fairness. Those are the three key things. The three key things. Service, justice, and fundamental fairness. Now that we have that foundation laid, we can begin to erect some things. And everybody knows what happens with a cracked foundation in a house, right? That ceiling wall, those tiles get bigger and bigger, and I don't care how much paint you put on it, eventually you got a cracked foundation. You got to figure out you're going to move, or tear down and report. So we're talking about a profession that has a history of nobility, a history of service, and is an important position. I came in on the Reno administration, and she said that the police must have the trust and the confidence of the communities that they serve. They must develop a partnership and a relationship. Now, what is a relationship? This is interactive.
Where people talk.
Where people talk, what else? People engage, they get to know each other, what else?
They're responsible to each other.
They're responsible, what else?
Safety net. The safety net?
Safety net, which means if I fall, you catch me, right?
Right.
What else? Support.
Trust.
Trust. You want to cry? So what we're talking about here is you're talking about a group of people with specific characteristics, goals, themes, all those things working together. All right, that's a relationship. That's a relationship. There's sharing, there's caring, there's goals, there's sacrifice, there's vulnerability, there's transparency. That's a relationship. But the key word that you said with all that is trust. Without that, you don't have a relationship. You might have an arrangement, but you don't have a relationship. Reno said it is built upon confidence. They have to have the confidence of the people that they're sworn to protect and serve. And so 2 questions we have to ask when we go into these situations where there is a breach, if there's a mistrust, there is a non-relationship. We have to ask these questions. Number 1, how was the trust breached and is it repairable? First question, how was the trust breached and is it repairable? Because even if I figure out how the trust was breached and I can't repair it, at best I have an arrangement. I'll tolerate you. I'll come to work with you. I'll send the patrol car with you. I'll ride through the neighborhood, but I will never give you my best. It's an arrangement. So the 2 questions you have to always ask when you figure out if there's a breach in trust is, how was it breached and is it repairable? Okay? Washington poll, a CNN poll, this was a few years ago. 13% of Americans say the government can be trusted. Only just 13% can be trusted. Now let's August 2014, I'm sorry. Yeah, we said probably less now.
Yeah.
All right. That was like in the room at lunch today, right? He said 47% of women feel that they've been discriminated against, or there's experience some form of gender bias, and he said probably more. And all the women thought, yeah, probably more, more. Okay. So just 13% of Americans say the government can be trusted to do what is right always, most of the time. The number who trust the government all or most of it has right is so low that it's hard to remember that there was ever a time when Americans routinely trust the government. But there's still some hope. There's still some hope. All right? And the Huffington Post survey that was done back in April 2015 that said when asked about their local police departments, 25% of respondents said they have a great deal of trust in those officers. 36% said they had a fair amount of trust. Nationwide, 19% said they have a great deal of trust. 37% said they have a fair amount of trust. And there's still a disparity between the perception between how Black Americans and how White Americans view it. That's the lens. That's a different lens. That's a different culture. I'm sure you go to other communities, that's a different culture. That's a different perspective, a different lens. Those things have to be taken into account. They can't be discounted, they have to be taken into account when we start talking about, because I said there's hope there, but guess what? Hope is not a plan. Hope is not a plan. There's hope there. Now we have to drill down to what's guiding those other 2 bullets. It's like going through an evaluation as an instructor. All right? Usually you skim through the evaluation, you say, hey, look, great instructor, knows the topic well. This was fine, this was fine. and you get 30 evaluations, and 2 of them say, not beneficial, did not meet my expectations, right? So what do you do as an instructor? You say, well, I got 28. They'll book me again, I got 28, all right? Or do I drill down to figure out what was it about those 2? Was it that they didn't want to be there? They were told to be there? Was it that my delivery was wrong? Were they in the wrong class? But I got to drill down on those last 2. That's what's important. So in law enforcement, we have some specific responsibilities that we have to do. Those responsibilities include preserving your freedom, upholding the law, ensuring justice, protecting life, and peacekeeping. Upholding law, you hear a lot about justice. Justice is about balance. And justice is not always about what we think we're going to get or what the person should get. I always say that you don't necessarily get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. Does that make sense? I don't necessarily get what I deserve. I get, because the Sheriff Glover said there's uncaught and there's caught. That's not get what I deserve, get what I negotiate. So protecting life, and sometimes in protecting life, law enforcement has to take a life. And then the peacekeeping, standing in that middle, trying to be that arbitrator, trying to be that mediator. Sometimes we can't eliminate, how do we mitigate? You do it a lot with your clients, right? So there are some specific tools that we have to do that. I put the tool bit up there because when I left the streets in 1998, 1999, somewhere around that time, that was probably the only thing that was keeping me rooted to the ground, because I was probably about 155 pounds dripping wet coming out of the academy. 25-pound belt helped me get a lot. All right? But I want you to have the image of, we have some powerful tools as law enforcement to carry out those responsibilities. Search and arrest. Stop you. I can frisk you. I can come into your home with the proper papers. With probable cause, I can make certain searches. All right? You guys battle that back and forth, get that motion to death on out, because that was an illegal search. That goes back and forth all day long. Use of force. Powerful tool. Incarceration. Out of everything that happened to me in the police academy, the one instructor that I will never forget is the one who said to me, you are the most powerful person in the United States of America at 2 o'clock in the morning, or any time for that matter of fact. You're the most powerful person. What about the president? He said if the president wants somebody arrested, he has to call a sworn law enforcement officer to do it. So you have the ability to take away somebody's freedom. And don't talk to me about presumption of innocence. That's a good theory, but I write the press releases for the U.S. Attorney. And when I finish sending out the press release on an indictment or a complaint that is alleged, and I send it out nationwide on Twitter and tweet, you guilty. In the public opinion. He must have done something wrong, right? I pass a law enforcement officer on the side of the street, I see the K9 out, I see all the stuff out of the car, he must have done something wrong. All right? So, that power is huge. That power is huge. And then we have the power of influence. The power of influence. We can actually be a part of, with those relationships in the community, being able to go out and to quell things, to be able to talk those things through, to be able to help to find solutions to the problem that plagues the community. So, the power of influence. So, there are tools on the belt, if you will. Now, which one do you think is the most powerful? I can put you in prison, in jail. I can shoot you. I can arrest you, I can keep the locomotive, I can search your premises. What's the most important tool? The most powerful tool?
Influence.
You already won one prize. Who else? What's the most powerful tool?
Person. Oh, influence. Oh, they take away my freedom.
Freedom. Somebody said take away my freedom. The tool, the most powerful tool, take away freedom. Who says freedom? Who says influence? Influence. More powerful than the gun. Because if I use my influence, I won't have to draw my weapon. I can count the times I had to legitimately draw it for use of force situations. 155 pounds, brought in guys 225, 240, 250 pounds on a regular basis. How did I do it? Without a scratch. How did I do it? Get the gas. No, I can't whip you. Don't want to have to shoot you. and will talk 25 to 30 minutes and get into a 5-minute conversation that I may lose. Hey man, it's not me, it's the law, it's that judge downtown. So I can take the in between. Okay, I'll do that. Power of influence. Power of influence. Let me tell you why that's so important. Because here's the misperception. There are approximately 18,000 law enforcement agents in this country. Right? Approximately 885,000 sworn full-time law enforcement officers in this country. What's the population of the United States of America? Approximately 325 million. If at any given time the population decides they no longer want to be governed by authority, they won't. And there's nothing to do about it. We don't have the manpower. Let's say the Bureau of Justice Statistics got it wrong. Let's say it's 1 million full-time. Still can't do it. Add 3 million active military. Still can't do it. The best tool that we have is for the voluntary service of the law of the public. I come to the stop sign, I stop. Not because of the law enforcement officer there. Can't start as not a law enforcement officer there. But if I go to the stop sign, I can do myself or I can do somebody else. It's in my best interest. So the power of influence, how I use my influence in the community, carries far more weight than I can actually do as far as my numbers. And so that's what Peel talked about, Robert Peel, known as the father of modern policing from Britain. Policies that we adopted here in 1829 and thereafter. The police must secure the willing cooperation of the public and voluntary service of the law. Have to depend on it. So people think they're dependent on law enforcement. Law enforcement is actually dependent on police. Law enforcement is actually dependent on the public. Okay? So, one of the things they hit on all points. 2013, then Attorney General Eric Holder talked about the reforming of the criminal justice system. How many people heard about Smart on Crime? I think he actually gave that talk to the American Bar Association. He said we had to have a criminal justice reform. We need to look at the way we do things a little bit differently. And he talked about 5 key points in that. Now, one point was we dedicate finite resources to critical issues, violent offenders. Look, I don't make apologies for violent offenders. There are some people who are arrested, who went to prison, who should never get out. That's my opinion. Because of some of the heinous things that they did. The children, to elderly, I think they need to be gone. But there are some people that when I put my handcuffs on, I got their attention. They said, hey, show me another way. So what he talked about is, since we don't have unlimited resources, we have to be strategic in how we look at how we deploy resources. So the most violent offenders, the most critical incident, we have to make sure our resources go there. And then we need to say, hey, yeah, I smoked something. I got caught with not a trafficking amount, but a small amount. You still have to be held accountable for those actions. So he talked about looking at the minimum mandatory, telling his prosecutors, the U.S. Attorney's Office, to be able to say, look at how do we charge offenders to make sure we're not giving somebody 25, 30 years for 2 buds, residue. And then he talked about promoting fairness and eliminating disparities in the criminal justice system. There is a disparity, no question about it. How we get there, how we tackle that problem, those are the hard questions we have to ask. That's how we have to drill down in the organization. But how do we eliminate those disparities? Because even the appearance of impropriety, even if it's not factual, causes us problems in the system, specifically on the front line of law enforcement. It's an officer safety issue. We see it every day where there's a perception of mistreatment. There's an increase in assault in those communities against law enforcement. Prevention, intervention, and outreach. And then what they talked about is re-entry. That's one of the things Smart on Crime has been doing. We've been working with JREC here in Jacksonville. We've been doing since 2006 around the district. As well as working with the Bureau of Prisons. We have, 75 miles north of Tampa, the largest federal correction complex in the United States, Coleman, FCC Coleman. 2 U.S. penitentiaries, medium facility, low, and a work camp. Over 6,800, approximately 6,800 housed there every year. From our docket alone, from our federal court docket alone, we contribute about 1,200 of those cases, of those bodies. But guess what? I don't care how aggressive we are. I don't care how many we put in, 95% of them are going to come right back home. We started doing it in 2006, 1,500 were coming back to Jacksonville. 1,500 coming back to Jacksonville. And so, with Jacksonville journey, with the former U.S. Attorney at that time, with the mayor at that time, with the sheriff at that time, putting together resources for that Jacksonville Reentry Center, we were able to, they said, we're going to target 500. Give them intensive case management, 1 year off their supervised release, if they complete the program, address the issues of housing, address the issues of transportation, education, health, all those issues. Let's address those issues and work with them with service providers in the community. Let's address 500. They addressed 500. They targeted 500. They actually successfully treated, I think, about, for client listed, about 254. And what I was told is that the realization for it back in the city coffers was about $3 million. Now, you transition that with spending about $27,000 to $32,000 a year for one offender reincarcerated over and over and over again, and then figure out where that money can be used. Prevention. You guys have the straw mat for it here. Drug education for youth. At the same time, we were targeting violent offenders in the community. We took 9 to 12-year-olds in those same communities, most of them identified by law enforcement, local schools, and community members. We partnered with Mayport. We took a 1 week leadership camp out of Mayport. Team building, curriculum, leadership training, succession planning. Guys who were wannabe gang members, we took them and put them in charge of squads. They turned around. 1 week in leadership camp, 10 months out of leadership camp in the community, once a month meeting with them. They were doing neighborhood cleanup. This is what your officers told me. Less than 3% ended up in the criminal justice system. How much did it cost? $10,000 for 40 kids for 1 year. Other monies were leveraged with the community. $10,000 from Justice Department monies. That's $250 a kid for an entire year. What did I just say we spent in the criminal justice system? 30, 40 grand, right? With no hopes of, realizing their potential. So the straw mat is already there. But that's one thing we're talking about. Why are partnerships essential? If you don't believe the other numbers that I gave you, why do you think they're essential? 2008 economic downturn. First time you started seeing law enforcement officers being laid off. Never heard of it in my life. First thing to go, training budgets. Poor trained officers. Say it again.
Make poor decisions.
Poor decisions. Okay? Community resource officers went out the window. So approximately 30,000 law enforcement officer jobs unfilled. Fewer staff. But the 2011, they said comparisons was like 2010, the first decline in law enforcement officer positions in at least the last 25 years. Budget cuts had a heavy impact. As a matter of fact, right before Ferguson and Baltimore and all these things, cops was all ready to close their doors. People didn't see the value in it. So, when we were hiring officers on the local level or getting grants off on the local level to be able to supplement the bodies on the street, and more importantly, the problem-solving techniques that came along with that suffered in the 2008 downturn. Some agencies stopped responding to all motor vehicle thefts. Your car was stolen, I'll stay on the phone. Right? They didn't come out anymore. Burglar alarms, non-remote vehicle accidents, decreases in investigation, reduced training opportunities, technology communication systems are being slashed. So the partnerships are essential to maintaining public safety. They're essential. It produces short-term, long-term, and crisis neutralization. Here's some of the short-term. Community awareness of law enforcement duties and responsibilities. You heard most of the panelists talk about most people don't understand what their offices and what their agencies do. When I come to the room, most people say, he's here at the state attorney's office. They don't understand the distinction between the state attorney's office and the U.S. attorney's office. And guess what? Until I had my first federal case in court, I didn't either. And I was a cop. Okay? I didn't either. Higher law enforcement awareness of community problems, more distractions got in community empowerment. You're actually giving the community the power to give you the tools, what you need to replenish that budget, replenish all the resources that you need done, you need to get done. So those are the short-term effects. Let's look at some of the midterm effects. Increased quality of life in the community. Officer safety. Fewer officers get assaulted when there's more trust in the community. If I feel like when you're going to arrest me, it's going to be a confrontation or I may die, I'm going to resist. All right? Officer safety. Social ills, you talked about that. Underlying issues. Law enforcement traditionally deals with the symptoms, unless you're talking about problem-oriented policing, where you're going to the root causes. But if I don't have the time to go from call to call to call, I don't have the resources to do what I'm already supposed to do, how can I deal with the deeper issues in the community? So you're treating symptoms over and over again, and you're never getting to the cause, the root cause of it. Spontaneous mobilization, planned mobilization. Spontaneous mobilization means rapture, burglaries, assault. I can deploy a team there for a limited amount of time. Remember the numbers. I don't have the numbers to stay there. I can stop the bleeding momentarily. What we're talking about building trust is about having planned mobilization. Planned mobilization means that I'm thinking way out in advance. I may not see the benefits of this, but the next administration may realize those results. So that's some of the long-term things. And then the neutralized crisis situation. I was part of the team of the Trayvon Martin shooting with the U.S. Attorney's Office and Justice Department. We were running parallel investigations. Why do you think we had thousands of people coming into Sanford and Florida. My phone was a public affairs officer was ringing off the hook. I'm coordinating with every other agency that was involved. If I come to Florida, will I get shot? Who? Can I have skip? I mean, it was off the chain. All right? And we had thousands of people coming. We had extremists from the left and from the right coming saying, look, we're going to have a clash. And the boundary was declared. All those things were happening. Why do you think we didn't have the amount of chaos that you saw in Ferguson and in Baltimore? Why? Two reasons. Why? What do you think? Keep going.
People thought it was going to be dealt with in a proper way, and they have to do something else.
Keep going.
Communication.
Keep going. Two reasons, in my opinion. It wasn't an officer-involved shooting. Number one. And number two, while the issues raised by that shooting came to national attention, he was not unaware. We had been working in that community justice programs similar to the ones we had here in here in Jacksonville for years. For years. And so the community said, we will push the pause button to give you an opportunity to resolve this. So when the family of the deceased, Trayvon's parents, and their attorneys requested a meeting with the Justice Department. And they came in with about 14 strong with their contingent. Reverend Sharpton was there, attorneys were there, mother and father was there. And then from the Justice Department side, the FBI was there, I was there, Community Relations Service was there, some of our prosecutors were there, civil rights attorneys there. And when we came into that room with that meeting, there were a couple of things, and I don't take anything for granted. My job is to advise the U.S. Attorney on specific matters. I don't take anything for granted. The day of that meeting, Reverend Sharpton's mother had just passed. And so before I said anything, my first thing to him was, I want to extend my condolences to you. I was sincere for your loss. Meeting business aside, he kind of stood back kind of with things like, I really appreciate that. And I told the boss, I said, look, before we get into any minutiae about the legalities of the case and what we can and what we cannot do, we have to extend our sympathies. A life has been lost. Period. And so when we sat across the table, the difference was there were 10,000 people outside around that afternoon. They sat across, they said, they're ready to protest. And we said, look, the attorney looked across, I know him. I know her. Oh, we've worked together before. And the Justice Department official said this, you may not like the outcome of the findings, but we will leave no stone unturned. And Trayvon's mother said, that's all we ask. And Reverend Sharpton turned and said to the U.S. Attorney, he said, I would rather much be the U.S. Attorney tonight. I have 10,000 people out here. ready to protest. All right. He said, but don't you worry about it. I'll handle it. Sheriff Glover said something very interesting. We had something in the bank. So you didn't have disturbances, people protest, which is what they're right to do, but you didn't have those things that happened because there was a relationship that was there. And so those things can, a community, those things, they can produce, they can be crisis neutralizers. They can be crisis neutralizers. So we talked a lot about diversity, this whole term of what it is. You got all these textbook terms of what diversity is. These terms change all the time. Diversity in 2016 could not be defined as what diversity was in 1995 because of what's happening in the climate of the country, the social evolution of the country. Can't be decided. So people often think about race, religion, sexual orientation, but it's much more than that. One of the things I do when I'm putting together a diverse team to deal with a crisis situation is I want to have diversity of thought. Not just race. I want, yes, if it's a dynamic situation for racial and ethnic issues, a spectrum, I want that reflected. But I also want to have gender reflected. I want to have the idea reflected. Because I'm a big picture thinker, I want to see the longer. I need a guy who can deal out to do the nuts and the bolts stuff. I want to have that process strained before the decision is made. So diversity is all those things that we talk about, but what I like to refer to that is the tool belt. So look at the tool belt and tell me what's missing.
Hammer.
Besides the person, just the tool belt.
No, song.
Does it have a buckle on?
Some deep thinkers in here. That's a level of that. Drill.
It's just tools, there's no stuff to work with. There's no nuts or bolts or materials.
The question we need to be asking ourselves is, what's the job? What's the job? Yeah, so if I don't know what the job is, I don't know if I have the right tools. All right? It could be, I could be going to fix a car, but most of those things are going to work. Right? So the first thing we have to ask about is, what are we looking to solve before we ask what's missing? Because diversity is a readiness issue. Am I ready to tackle the task before me or the problem before me? So 9/11 happened, right? Boom. Next day, 9/12, my phone rings off the hook. Will, you know anybody who speaks Arabic? Nope. Click. Will, you know anybody who speaks Farsi? Nope. Click. Will, you know anybody who speaks Amharic? Nope. Click. Why? Because prior to that time, we had not hired the people at those levels to keep up with the changing demographics in our country. So we were not ready. So the end result was we ended up paying consultants hundreds of thousands of dollars to translate transcripts and hope they were telling us the truth. We weren't ready. So diversity is a readiness issue. Is your organization ready? Is it ready to confront the challenging times that we live in and the changing system that we're living in right now? It's a readiness issue, more than anything. There's some basic cornerstones of it, though. It's about engagement. I can put everybody in the room. Getting everybody in the room is not success for me. You got CLE credits, you're going to come. Right? I got to get a certification to get to the next level. On my promotion, I'll come to the class. But I can sit there all day and never engage. So diversity, one of the cornerstones is about engagement. It's bringing everybody along, regardless of what the differences are in that process so we can be ready. It's about the ability to work together. That's the successful part, not just get in the room. Can we work together despite what our differences are, what our different perceptions are, our different ideologies are? Can we still work together? Because here's my philosophy as far as the tool belt is concerned. I believe, without knowing anybody in this room, the only person I've talked to at any length of time has been Maria. But I believe that if there's a man-made or natural disaster that takes place right now in this room, I believe we can solve the crisis. Somebody that understands emergency medical care, somebody that understands safety and security, somebody that understands structural. Oh, I did this in my past life. I did this in this life. I did this like that. Somebody understands, but if you do this, it's going to be illegal. Well, I have plenty of lawyers about working. But all those issues are there, but we can work together. But we have to believe in that. The most important respect I can say on all the cornerstones is that the fact that at the bottom of it, on the top level of it, is everybody deserves human dignity and respect. What is the number one complaint against law enforcement every year in the country?
Brutality.
Say again?
Brutality.
Their general mentality, are you kidding?
Disrespect.
Most people will think it's use of force.
Oh,
It is the most complaint we get is, I don't like the way the officer talked to me. Now that can be the use of force. It often does lead to use of force. But the fundamental principle of human dignity and respect, everybody has supported that. When I worked, and I still do, but when I worked with the warden at that time of Coleman, Warden Holder, Carl Holder, and I'd never seen this before, walking into a penitentiary, and this man's like a rock star. This man's got you. They part the watch. How you doing, Warden? How you doing? I didn't need anything. Two things, Warden, he did. If he walked into an inmate's pod and they said he's not going to the pod, he would walk up to him and say, look, he said, now, my job is carry custody and control while you're here. You're going into the pod, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to remain human. It's your choice. But you have to go into the pod. So when he had to take that enforcement action, the rest of the people, man, he told you. He did what he had to do to control the situation. At the same time, at least twice a year, he brought service providers in there to figure out, before you got out, how are you going to be successful on reintegrating to society? Twice a year. And refused to have people come in with dog and pony shows. You have to have a substance evidence-based program to show me how you're going to help this ex-offender. And got his staff to volunteer to do it, but no Bureau of Prisons wouldn't give him a dime to do it. All right? So he understood human dignity and respect. If I treat them like human beings, more often than not, people will respond if I give them that avenue. Prejudice is eliminated by developing high-performance teams. In our hate crime and civil rights working group, we said we don't educate people to get rid of prejudice. We get rid of prejudice by educating people first. So diversity is about creating high-performance teams. I have to have the best of the best minds to solve the problem. The best of the best talent, the most diverse experience to solve the problem. So if I have a high-performance team, guess what? People don't think about, wait a minute, he's Asian, she's Hispanic, he's white, she's black, they can do the job. How many of you break down your football teams by race? You say Super Bowl champion, right? It's the Seahawks or whomever, right? You don't think about it in all terms of individuality, you think about the team concept, high-performance team. Who can move the ball from one end to the other? And the other part of it is it's about ensuring diversity thought at every level of the organization. It's not good enough to say that me as the CEO or the leader of the organization understands diversity. So everybody at every phase of it has to understand diversity. They have to practice, even if it's at a different level, they have to practice it. I don't care if it's the custodian. I don't care if it's the U.S. attorney. They have to practice it at every level of the organization. Everyone adds talent and value. Everyone has to have value. I don't care if they're in a wheelchair. I don't care if they're a paraplegic. If for no other reason that person provides an opportunity for their mind to solve the problem of their neurological disability, then guess what? They've added value to our society. If they provide a moment for us to have introspection and for inspiration and for thinking, they add value. So don't say that this guy over here who just went to high school is not as good as the guy who has a PhD. Different perspective, different experience. Most important person, important role in our society today, think of it, profession. What do you think it is? What do you think the most important profession in our society today?
Teachers.
Close.
Parents.
Close.
It's a hard job.
Sanitation worker. Yeah. Why do you think Dr. King went to Memphis? Sanitation worker. I don't care what jobs we hold. They don't pick up the trash, we all die because of disease, eventually. You ever seen garbage workers go on strike? No matter how much money you make, the trash is sticking outside your mansion, right? So the other thing is, everybody has, you don't have to be one of to stand with. What do I mean by that? You don't have to be one of to stand with.
You don't have to, no one has to be that same as someone else to stand with them on their beliefs.
Exactly right. When Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali refused his induction to the armed services to go to the Vietnam War. Black athletes at that time, Jim Brown, Wilt Chamberlain, all those guys, they held a press conference, they stood with me and said, look, we don't necessarily agree with his refusal to be inducted into the armed services, but we agree with his right to refuse. Female, a victim of discrimination, bias. I'm not female. I don't have to be female to say, that's not right. All right? So I don't have to be one of them to stand with. So sometimes we box ourselves and think, well, I'm not this. I have friends on different sides of the political spectrum. And they say, well, I say, this is an issue before the ballot. They'll say, well, who sponsored it? Democrat or Republican? I say, it's a good idea. It's a well thought out plan. All right? So you can't let yourself be boxed in. 5 reasons why diversity is important. Number 1 is the law of the land, safe productive and work environment. I'm going to make a business case for it, change demographics. I'm going to talk about a moral authority. The law of the land. Number 1, breaking the law leads to consequences. Billions of dollars. How many of you do litigation for lawsuit discrimination? He was quick to raise their hand. You got a card? All right. Image and impact on your organization. Reputation. Compliance is not enough. All right. There's a cost of discrimination. Let's look at some of the private sector headlines. 50% of workers, Gallup poll, December 5th, perceive they have been subject to discriminatory practice or treatment. See, these come through my desk all day long. You're suing someone just from $335 million settlement to resolve allegations of discrimination by countrywide. Come across my computer all day long.
Section of U.S. Attorney's Office does that kind of investigations. I mean, is that like
So,
economic civil rights? Okay.
we have a prosecution side, we also have a civil.
Yeah,
The defense,
I mean within the civil section, is there a particular division that
we have civil rights, we have fair housing, some guys who look at different economic issues.
Okay.
Private sector. This is a few of the headlines. This is a good one. A number of men and women who graduate from law school even the violence 70% of women go on to make parliament. True or false?
Sure.
Women spoke up on that? All right. Public sector, we're not doing too well either. Second reason, diversity is important. Safe and productive work environment. People do their work, best work when they're comfortable. If I have to come to work like thinking about being harassed, waiting for the axe to drop, okay, being singled out, I'm not gonna do my best work. And face it, we're in a war for talent. We're in a war for talent because the culture clash that we talk about now, people don't come to work now. I'm gonna leave for 25 years and get my gold watch and my pension. Huh. Ever heard of the millennial generation? All right. In law enforcement now, we used to come. When I started on at the police department, $26,000 a year, no take-home car, bought most of my own uniforms. The guys in the same department now make $46,000, $50,000 a year, and they come to the department and say, "What you gonna do for me?" We had to sell ourselves of what we brought to the agency. And if you give them a bad evaluation, mom would call you and say, "I don't like the way you FTO rated my son." True story. The mileage on his car is he has too many miles on his patrol car. I want him to have a newer car. You're in a war for talent. This generation and the society that we're in now, we've evolved in information-based, the knowledge worker. So what it means is this, is that teams come together to solve a critical issue. I give you the best of my talent, you pay me well for it, I go to the next gig. The study says that this generation, the millennial, will have approximately 7 careers in their lifetime, not jobs. 7 careers, I'll switch. And if given the opportunity, they said, I would rather have more internet access time than salary, and higher salary. So we're in a war for talent, so you get accused of discriminating. So, yeah, you got a culture in the organization, you have a culture in the agency. But he may dress a little differently, she may dress a little differently, might not be the same corporate attire, but they have the knowledge and the skills and the assets that you need for your organization. More workforce diversity coming. Age-wise, racial makeup. I'm not going to show you all of these, but just look at the 10 most expensive class action settlements for the 2013. They settled over $638 million. Merrill Lynch, $160 million. Discrimination. What do you guys get, like 33% of that? 30 of that?
Did it go to trial?
So, 39 million, Bank of America. 4.5, Postal Service. 3.7, City of Chicago Fire Department. 3.1, Department of Corrections, State of Connecticut. And all of these, most of these are based on exclusionary practices. Not that they couldn't compete, not that the people weren't qualified, that the culture didn't want that change. So they'd rather pay this kind of money than to add value, add the needed talent to the organization, take it to the next level and keep it competitive. FedEx, 61 million. Wonder why your shipping fees are going up. So this is what in 2014, fiscal year 2014, EEOC received over 88,000 discrimination complaints. And then 42% was on retaliation. Once the people went through the process to try to say, look, I have a grievance, they even further retaliated against the people, taking the number up. $296 million in total monetary relief. Business case. One of the last big studies that was done, it's probably something more current, one of the last biggest studies that I know was done more comprehensive was the corporate leader study. $64 billion with a B in 2007. In 2007, U.S. employers spent $64 billion as a result of losing and replacing professionals and managers who quit solely because of workplace unfairness. So let's look at some of the turnover-related costs. Hourly worker costs between $5,000 and $10,000 to replace. Executive making $100,000 a year costs between $75,000 and $211,000 to replace. This is a turnover-related cost. For law enforcement, we drill down. Salary range $26,000 to almost $50,000. Cost between $65,000 and $98,000. We put about $98,000 training in that person before they even hit the street. About $98,000. That's lost. Which translates to who? Taxpayers. Other costs. 1 in 4 individuals who experience unfairness on the job said they experience the strongest discouragement from recommending their employer or their products to other potential employees. How many of you had a bad experience in a store and can't wait to get on the phone? Guess what? Now they just tweet you to death. Tweet, goes viral. Okay. Changing demographics. And then the other part of that too is, let me just say this. You're talking about lost productivity, lost time, lost institutional knowledge. All of those things play. Those are other factors, all the intangibles there. Changing demographics. 1980, the population of the United States was 80% white. Today, the proportion has fallen to 63%. By 2060, is predicted to be less than 44%. Now, if you are a person who does not understand diversity, that threatens you. But if you understand the scenario that I gave you based on 9/11, and that we're not a global world, we're interconnected, there are no boundaries anymore, I need every aspect to be able to compete in the global marketplace. So the question becomes, how do I harness that? How do I harness that? I'll talk about immigration. Nation of immigrants. Residents in 2050 would be at least 65 years old. What are we going to do with our elderly population? I say this in every steering committee or initiative that I set up working with communities. Or they just old school. I like my old school music. Right? You have to have the wisdom of the ages coupled with the innovation and the vigor of the youth to solve any problem. Let me put it in cop perspective for you. Young rookie with me, I'm driving around. Pull up, guy takes off, think he has drugs. I let the young guy, I'll meet you around the corner with the car. You run it. Run to me. I'm not getting that, I'm not doing that anymore. But guess what? I've been on the beat long enough to know what the paths are. I know he's gonna come out. You just run until he gets tired. I'll be there waiting on you. Culture clash. I said this. We have now, at the same time, 4 generations in the workplace at the same time. Ideas. And I'm that old guy now. I'm 50 years old. I'm that old guy now. Loud music, can't stand it. Please pull up your pants. I don't want to see it. So my personal bias that I have to work through every day, spring break, downtown Tampa, is teenagers. They don't know where to walk the sidewalk, they just can't hold the sidewalk, okay, no. So I'm that old guy now, but we're all, guess what? And we're in the workplace together now. I got students in my office. Oh, you just talk on the phone all day. Well, where were you with all the rest of the violent offenders? And they want to come right out of college, don't know anything except for theory, and they want to make what you want to make and want to be in your corner office. Want to be partner in your firm. They tried one case, I said, but my grandma ain't tried nan case. Right? But here's the problem with shifts. Shifts in the community create tensions in the organization. Why is that?
They don't change.
People don't like change. Why?
Because we've always done it this way.
I'm comfortable. I'm in my comfort zone. I got this. You get me on the dance floor, I can do 2 steps. I'm right here. Good. I can't cha-cha, I can't salsa like the president, you know, I'm right here. But if you ask me to do something beyond that, that requires learning. But in order to have effective change, to be competitive, we always have to go on the cutting edge. We have to be slightly uncomfortable. Slightly uncomfortable. Okay, so the tensions tend to challenge our condition, our perceptions about the nature of things, how they should be, how we think they should be. Right? So that requires a transformation of the way business is done in order for the organization to continue achieving the mission and purpose for which it was established. There are some basic responsibilities that I said law enforcement specifically had to do. That's not going to change. We can do outreach, we can do community forums, we can do talking, but the first mission of law enforcement, according to Peel, is to prevent crime and disorder. Prevent it. The tools we have to do it are those things that I talked about. So there's some basic mandates in our charter, some basic things in your law profession, whether you're a prosecutor, whether you're a defense, there's some certain things that you have to do. That you're charged. Some of the other stuff is extra. It can help the way you get your job and fulfill your mission, but there's some basic things we have to do. But we have to think about how do we incorporate these things into making our mission effective and making it relevant to these days and these times. And the fifth thing is it's the right thing to do. Give every lawyer your book, give every officer a statute book, and I would say to them this. Statute book this high. This is the minimum expectation. Code of conduct. The statute is the minimum expectation. But there's a higher moral authority. It has to be principle-centered. Based on principle, based on core values. So you have to understand what your mission is, who's your customer, what your customer needs are, what they value, And then, what are your results? Those are the questions you have to ask for the organizational standpoint. But it has to be principle-centered. So it's important because of this. If at any given time a substantial population decides they don't want, that they are not a part, they don't have that buy-in, they don't have input, they seek to destroy it. Subtly or overtly. You've been on jobs where you can't get promoted, you keep getting passed over, the boss says, you know what? And you think about, how can I get out of here? I can't get out of here. I can't go to another job. You know what? I'm not going to give my best. Or, instead of checking, it's like, I'm going to just leave that blank. It can either be subtle or it can be overt. But if you don't feel like you're a part of the organization, you're having something to contribute, you're being a part of it, you don't have a voice, you don't have buy-in. And so when we talk about dealing with communities, building trust, you can't do it to the community, you can't do it for the community, you have to do it with the community. And sometimes that means sitting down with people, fill out a survey, who are illiterate. And what I mean by literate is cannot read and write and comprehend. It means they don't understand this system of processes. Because I've got some PhDs on the corner who have never gone to school. I was at the University of Kentucky on a panel about gangs, and with gangs once. And this guy got up there, he was, he got vested. But he said, this guy is not that smart. He worked on this whole task force, this a criminal organization, drug trafficking organization. This guy dropped out of high school. This guy had a multi-level marketing strategy. He had distribution. They didn't know where he was bringing it in from. He had all set up into legitimate business, and they couldn't touch him. He was so far removed. They knew he was doing it, but they just couldn't prove it in the court of law. And he said, well, we'll eventually get him because he's not educated. I said, I beg to differ. We got a 100-man task force on this guy. We ain't touched him yet. No, he's educated. We're trained. We're doing the same thing over and over again. He's thinking outside of the box. All right? So you have to make sure that you have those persons represented in your organization that different thought process. Okay? So let me, don't worry about the actor, but listen to the words. When we talk about creating high-performance teams.
In the 7th Cavalry, we got a captain from the Ukraine, another from Puerto Rico. We've got Japanese, Chinese, blacks, Hispanics, Cherokee Indians, Jews and Gentiles, all Americans. Now here in the States, some men in this unit may experience discrimination because of race or creed. But for you and me now, all that is gone. We're moving into the valley of the shadow of death, where you will watch the back of the man next to you as he will watch yours. And you won't care what color he is or by what name he calls God. They say we're leaving home. We're going to what home was always supposed to be. So let us understand the situation. We are going into battle against a tough and determined enemy. I can't promise you that I will bring you all home alive. But this I swear, before you and before Almighty God, that when we go into battle, I will be the first to set foot on the field, and I will be the last to step off, and I will leave no one behind. Dead or alive, we will all come home together. So help me God.
Anybody know the story behind that? The movie We Were Soldiers?
Yes.
Talk to them.
The first real battle during the Vietnam War. 1st Cavalry, 7th Cavalry, 1st Cavalry Division. By the way, I served in the cavalry in the Army with the Royal Colored But yeah, it was the first major battle in Vietnam, and the Army wasn't ready for the casualties they were taking. They were overrun, but the unit held its cohesion. They fought off. There might have been a whole division, not just one battalion. And it was an incredible lesson in leadership by General Hal Moore. General Hal Moore was the general. He rose to 4-star, I think, or 3-star later on.
And talk about what was going on in the country at that time.
Well, this was about, I think it was the early 60s, it might have been 65, I think when that was. And civil rights movement was going. There was a lot of questioning of governmental institutions. Society was going through some changes. Women were beginning to move into various places, just beginning to move into a lot of higher education positions, and some of the professions are still very rare, but they're just beginning to agitate for that. I use the word agitation, I don't mean that is what it is itself. There were a lot of changes going on in the nation.
Sound familiar?
Yes.
Sound familiar? But if I gotta trust the man next to me, regardless of what his beliefs are, regardless of what he looks like, that's how we have to view diversity in the 21st century. That's how crucial it is to build trust. That's how crucial it is to break down these walls. That's how crucial it is. If you don't understand racism, what it is, how it works, everything else you think you understand will only confuse you. If you don't understand racism, what it is, how it works, discrimination, what it is, how it works, everything else that you think you understand will only confuse you. So, what happens is, through these misperceptions, through these systems, we have these stereotypes. What's a stereotype?
Unsupported belief about an individual not based on any fact.
Good. And it's a generalization, right? Now, I'm skipping around a little bit now because I'm trying to be a little fluid, but one thing I want you to understand is that we all have biases. Okay? And there's a difference in implicit bias and explicit bias. Implicit bias can mean I don't have any animus towards you, I don't know you, or there's no particular hatred, but there's just something that kind of makes me, it's something that I have no reason to. Just, explicit bias can mean it's a hatred, it's an animus, it's something that's a culture, something that's been focused on. But the issue is we have a choice to be able to make a decision as humans to make a choice on how to deal with those things. So let me just tell you something about Mr. Diversity. I'm at JFK Airport, I'm getting ready to go to Africa, 2005, 2006. I'm in the plane, and I'm on Royal Admiral Rock, and I'm sitting down in my seat, and this young man gets on the plane. Black guy, braids, well kept, but braids. Pants a little FUBU, clothes baggy, not hanging off, but just comfortable, right? He's walking down the aisle. And I said to myself, I'm sitting in my seat, it's a 7-hour flight, I hope he's not sitting next to me. Mr. Diversity. Didn't know him, hadn't done anything to offend me. Well, as luck would have it, guess where he's at? Next to me. So my law enforcement posture tells me I'll sit here, don't you say anything, you don't say anything, that's the posture. I didn't say it, that's my posture. We can do this for 7 hours, we can do this. As life would have it, an event calls us to interact. Flight attendant says, I need you to pass him something. He hands it to me. Discussion starts. Kenwood was his name, was from South Florida. Kenwood was a teacher. Kenwood worked with the same group of kids that I worked with, Drug Education for Youth in Stockport, as I did in the Middle District of Florida. Kenwood was on his way to the Ivory Coast to get his wife and his 2 children to bring them back to America. Kenwood's father was an ambassador at the United Nations. In 3 hours, Kenwood taught me more about politics, law, and economics than I've ever learned in any classroom. For about 3.5 hours in the flight, he said, "Look, man, leave me alone. I'm tired." Mr. DeBrusk. It requires a self-check all the time. This person mistreats me. Do I blame the entire group for that? Now, part of that, what I drew from that, from my experience with Kenwood, is that most of my worst fights on the street as a cop were guys who looked like Kenwood. That age group. That dress. So it requires a self-check. So the question becomes, can we deal with stereotypes, and how do we deal with stereotypes? I'm not. Sorry about that.
Welcome to 2020. Do you judge people as individuals, or do you stereotype? We like to think that we're unbiased, but the truth is we're probably not. Now, this is something that people don't like to talk about, but tonight we will. People do tend to generalize about people.
French? Oh, Snooty.
The British have bad teeth. The Irish tend to drink.
What do you do for fun?
With some friends, we like to read books together.
Asians are studies. Gay men are effeminate. Blacks are better athletes. People think these things, but it's largely taboo to say them. Well, comedians get away with it.
You know, other than the bombs they strap to their chest, I have absolutely no idea what makes the Palestinians tick.
Here, people laugh at what in the real world is hurtful.
Reports of an anti-Semitic tirade at the time of a drunk driving arrest.
Mel Gibson generalized about Jews. Harvard's president about women.
Lawrence Summers announced today that he will step down at the end of the academic year.
Lawrence Summers lost his job when he said innate differences between men and women might explain why men dominate the sciences.
Seems like such a anti-21st century thing to say.
It's supposed to be the mark of enlightenment to pretend that there can't be any kind of group differences between people.
John McWhorter's a linguist who mocks the furor that followed Summers' comments. People freaked out.
They were acting. Summers was not up there being a sexist, but they felt it was part of their job as professors at Harvard to pretend that he was being a sexist in order to teach society that there are no such thing as group differences.
Stereotypes are ugly. Maybe we should willfully deny them.
There are group differences, some of them positive, some of them negative. I've gotten in trouble with some people by saying that African Americans tend to be good at dancing. It's a perfectly innocent statement, and Black Americans do have a strong dance tradition. But you're not supposed to say it.
Why not? Because differences are bad?
We can allow certain truths to peek through. To say that Black people tend to be good dancers because in America they do is not to threaten that there's going to be lynching and that Black people can't be lawyers anymore.
Everyone's a little bit racist.
This musical won the Tony Award while flaunting lots of forbidden stereotypes.
What you talking about, Kate? Oh, you were telling a black joke.
Well, yeah, Gary, but lots of people tell black jokes.
I know.
Of course you don't, you're black. But I bet you tell Polak jokes, right? Sure, I do those stupid Polacks.
The writers worried about the audience reaction. They feared people wouldn't like the name called.
Damn.
But they do. Why are they funny?
Well, because everybody has this stuff.
Ethnic jokes might be uncouth, but you laugh because they're based on truth.
Some stereotypes do seem based on truth. How about these? Men do less housework than women. Women talk more than men. Male dancers are more likely to be gay. And the fastest runners are black. Is it racist to say that?
It's
not supposed to stereotype, when really to stereotype is to be human.
Harmony? I don't know about that, but instead of pretending stereotypes are not there, we might benefit from talking about them openly and learning that they don't define us. No one wants to stereotype, right? But then why can't we stop ourselves? Well, the answer may be that it's just built into us. Instinct tells animals to make constant judgments based on differences. They know that to survive, they have to stereotype predators to avoid them. Some of these fish attack some of their own kind simply because they weren't hatched in the same lake. Likewise, chimpanzees may attack chimps that are not part of their group. It makes sense in a world of survival of the fittest. Animals are hardwired to ensure that their group survives and reproduces. And while most people have stopped killing each other because of differences, psychologists say we still categorize by things like age, race, and gender because our brains are wired to do it automatically.
You need to be able to distinguish who's a friend and who's a foe. You need to understand who's a member of your pack, who's a member of a different pack.
Even those of us who believe that we don't stereotype, we do.
Yes, you do. We categorize people automatically, unconsciously, immediately, based on a person's race and based on a person's sex.
It begins in childhood. We brought together 3 groups of kids at this day camp and showed them pictures of 2 men, one Arab, the other Asian.
Who do you like better, this man or this man?
The Chinese guy.
Again and again, more kids preferred the Asian man.
He looks leaner and he looks nicer. Because he looks nicer? Yeah, he does look nicer. And he has a smile on.
But both men are smiling. And what do the kids think about the personalities of the men?
Let me ask, you don't know this person, but what do you think he's like?
I think he's weird.
Why is he weird?
He just doesn't look like a very nice person. No. He looks like a scary dude.
He's on the phone. What's he talking about?
Maybe a raspberry?
What's he like?
He looks like a regular teenager to me.
We then showed them pictures of a black man and a white man. What were some comments about the black man?
He looks mean. That guy was Johnny. He looks weird. He looks like he's a basketball player.
So, tell me about this guy. Does he seem like a nice person?
I think he's nice. I think he's nice, except he might be mad about something.
He was probably picking up on something. This is Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh. The pictures are a little different. But when we asked which man is a criminal, most kids pointed to the black man. And when we asked which was a teacher, they said,
That one! The guy in the green shirt.
which is ironic because he's a Harvard professor. Of course, we adults claim not to have these biases, but psychologists who study stereotypes say we do. This test is supposed to capture them, to measure racial bias. It flashes pictures of white and black faces, and words like evil and nasty, plus good words like joy and wonderful, and then assesses whether you associate certain words with different races. The idea is to do it quickly so you don't have time to consciously think. The test designers say this will show whether or not you have a preference for anything. Skirts versus pants, Meg Ryan versus Julia Roberts.
Our mental processes can lead us to behave in ways, think in ways, perceive things in ways that are very different than what we expect.
We had this group of Pace University students take the test. They said they preferred Julia Roberts, and the test showed they did. But when we told them they had other biases, some got defensive.
You had a bias against women having careers.
I am not biased against that.
You put down you weren't biased against anybody, but you have a moderate bias as the test against gays. This doesn't mean that you are homophobic, because what you are is what you do. But is it possible that your unconscious mind is telling you something different?
No, the test is a loaded test because
It's not specifically asking you any of these questions about any group.
That's the idea.
It's asking you to press one key or another key.
But the researchers say pressing those keys shows what's really in your subconscious, with often surprising results. For example, both young and old people are overwhelmingly biased against the elderly.
You wouldn't expect that old people would think that old is bad. But in fact, the elderly are every bit as negative about the idea of old age as much younger people are.
The researchers find about half the black people who take this test show bias against blacks.
You had a moderate bias against black people. What?
I mean, on the test, I was going very fast.
Greenwald says many people discover they have biases they wish they didn't.
I certainly don't want to think of myself as a racist, but these things are in my head, they show up on the test.
Of course, the biases in our head are only harmful if we act on them.
The officers fired 41 bullets in a matter of seconds.
In 1999, 4 police officers shot and killed this man while he was reaching in his pocket for what they feared was a gun, but which turned out to be his wallet.
Correct decisions to shoot an arms target earn you 10 points.
Psychologists like Josh Carell study how race can affect these decisions. He's had thousands of people in America take this test. Different scenes flash across a screen. Then a person appears holding either something safe, like a cell phone, or something lethal, like a gun. The result?
They shoot very quickly when an armed target is black. They take a little bit longer to shoot when the armed target is white.
Even black people are quicker to shoot if the person is black.
White, black, Latino, Asian, again and again and again, we see this pattern of effects. Bias in the reaction times, bias in the mistakes that they make.
The test takers don't want to appear biased.
You don't want to appear that you're acting in a racist way.
There's actually some evidence that the more you're trying not to let race influence you, the more it does. We can give them explicit instructions. Don't show bias. And they show more.
So we have these biases. But what can we do about it?
We have to keep in mind here, the subconscious is the subconscious because we cannot control it, but we can control our own actions.
Exactly, say the researchers.
If we're just aware that it exists, it gives us a chance to do something, to be vigilant, to not let our unintended biases, our implicit biases take over our behavior, which can happen unintentionally.
Okay, so the key here is to understand that they exist. They exist. But the choice that we have as humans is what we do with those decisions. So our question is, with law enforcement, when we have confessions, what do we do when we see persons assigned to a specific stereotype? Mr. Diversity. What do we do? Okay? That becomes critically important if we're in a power position, in any position, but particularly if we have a position that we can actually impede locomotion, we can charge people, those type of situations. Or whatever the situation, if we have the opportunity to control somebody's destiny at all, as head of an organization. Okay? So these are important. So the stereotypes, we have to understand guides what we do. But the choice is ours. So we're talking about a social contract theory, or most of us, our public service is, people give us a certain amount of responsibility and power in exchange for the trust that we have. So they give up certain rights, we have certain responsibilities, we take on those responsibilities. So when we start talking about what happened in Ferguson, the 105 pages of the report that came out on that, you saw so many breaches at so many different levels. It was so systematic that, and by the way, I spent a lot of time with my DOJ component of Community Relations Service who goes into in these civil rights based on racial and ethnic issues. If you look at their studies, 95% of every civil unrest that took place in this country was precipitated by law enforcement action. What that means is that that was a trigger, law enforcement traffic stop, arrest. But there were other underlying issues in the community that were already there that went unaddressed for years, sometimes decades. And so the match was on the gasoline and it went up in smoke. So when we start talking about trust and accountability and legitimacy, we have to address all those issues. Stop the bleeding. I go to the hospital, I have a heart attack. Yeah, I want you to get me back. But now I want you to talk about my lifestyle change or how I'm going to remain healthy have to come in here again on a crash car, okay? So these are some of the issues that 105-page study bore out. Law enforcement also focused on generating revenue. In other words, they were ticketing people. It became a system of revenue. So if I ticket you, and I make you to post the bond, or you have to pay a fine. If I say, well, the fine is $200, I only have $100. No, you got to pay the full fine. Well, I can't pay the full fine. I can't afford it. Well, I'll issue an arrest warrant. So it became a cyclical process over and over again, so people could never get out of it. Okay, one incident, one action, they could never get out of it. Right? Law enforcement practices violate the law and undermine community trust, especially among African Americans. There was no trust. There was no trust. So every time there was a confrontation, it was more likely to be violent. Okay? On part of the law enforcement enforcer, and as part of the person who's the target of that, as far as subject of a traffic stop or a field interview, whatever, more likely to resist because the trust is broken down. You can go through and read this. Patterns and patterns and patterns. Patterns and patterns and patterns and patterns and patterns. Patterns and patterns and patterns and patterns and patterns. Bottom line, it was a systemic problem. It was not an isolated incident. That was simply the truth. So that's what we find in a lot of these other issues. They're not attended. The other issues are the contributing factors, the causing contributing factors are not attended to, so that becomes, the law enforcement action usually becomes the trigger to it. So the ethical responsibility, we talk about building accountability and legitimacy into our systems of practice. If the public has given up their right to enforce their own rights, citizens have placed their trust in government, in which a lot of times the police is seen as an extension of government. It's about accountability. So the failures of public trust, these are the symptoms we begin to see. We see this excessive force, we see corruption, we start seeing personal indulgence, and we can't tell people. See, here's another issue too with all the technology that the gentleman was talking about at the luncheon today. You talk about transparency. Transparency is forced now. It's forced. I can get your public records. I can get all this stuff online. So you can't just tell me anything. Now, the information I get online may be factual or it may be myth, but it creates that whole movement, that whole mentality. But in the best case scenario, legitimate information can be culled now from the internet and from public sources. So you don't have that cloak anymore. And so when we start seeing these things happen, the public oftentimes, Ms. Corey talked about not being able to describe a complex investigation in a soundbite. I deal with it all day long. I can only tell you what's in the indictment. I can't talk about the investigative facts. I can't talk about these other things. And I need for you to have that time to let that process play out. But if you don't have the trust, you don't have that time. You don't have the money in the bank. So the question becomes then, what does the community see? That community can be of any color, but what do they see when they see us in our practice? That becomes important, how they see us. What is their perception of us? So let me just do a quick exercise on the power of perception. I like to say we go through life deaf, numb, and blind. Not deaf, dumb, and blind. Deaf, numb, and blind. I mean that we hear but we don't listen, we see, look, we don't see, and we touch but we don't feel. I want you to read that. 55 men of unknown origins found fame and fortune in the marathon and were all found to be of sound body and fit as fiddle because they followed the rules of the race. Count the number of F's in that sentence. Got it?
11.
How many people said 5? I get to you, don't raise your hand. Anybody less than 5? 6, 7, 8, 9. Keep it up, keep it up. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13? Who got 13? Put your hands out. Who got 13? Who got 10? Down. 11. Down. 12. Anybody more than 12? 13?
I counted 14, I don't know why.
All right. Let's count them together.
Oh,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. All right? Why did we miss them? Why specifically? Why It's the last letter. What else? Don't stand out. But the preposition could change the entire meaning of the sentence, right? Alright? So we usually don't take note of those things that we deem to be, oh, it's not important. We just gloss over it, it's not important. Alright? So it's also I said we hear, we listen when we don't hear. We hear when we don't listen. Okay? Give me the answer to this equation. 5 plus 2 is what? 7. 5 plus 2 is what? 7. 6 plus 1 is what? 7. 4 plus 3 is what? 7. How many weeks in a day? 7. How many people raise your hand when you see the face? Raise your hand when you see the face. Raise your hand when you see the face. Raise your hand when you see the face. Alright. Good. Hand down, hand down, hand down. Raise your hand when you see the word liar. Raise your hand when you see the word liar. Keep looking, keep looking, keep looking, keep looking, keep looking. See the word liar. Alright, count the number of squares you see. Just hold it to yourself. Count the number of squares you see. Got your number? Got your number? Got your number? Okay, here we go. How many people said 16? I heard that. Yeah. How many people said 16? 18? 20? 19? 19? Okay. Anybody left more than 19? Where'd you get? 27. Well, lower than 19. Anybody lower than 19? Okay. 20? 21? 22? 23? 24? 25? 26? 27? 28? 29? 30? 31? We look at the same image, right? All right, let's go. All right, we got 1, 2, count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 5, 6, 27, 28, 29, 30 squares. What's the purpose of the exercise?
Perspective.
Perspective. Look deeper. We're so rushed to make quick judgment, Mr. Diversity, right? That we don't take the time to look deeper. That deeper look, that perspective could mean something critical to that person and to you. Particularly if you utilize that to make a decision, right? So, let me get you here. The power of change. Somebody talked about how you don't want to do a lot of changing, all right? I like what Liz Smith says, Blooming Brands. She says, honor the past, master the present, and build for the future. The culture you build has to be one that builds support and change, and support change, as long as it's consistent with a well-articulated vision, strategy, and ranking, right? So, honor the past. We don't forget about the past. So Glover talked about a little bit about bringing it to. That's important. Honoring the past, lest we forget the past, but we don't stay in the past, but we master the present and prepare for the future. Okay? When I went to West Africa, Goree Island, went to one of the slave ports to go no return off West Africa. Estimated about 12 million people, slave Africans, came through there on their way to South America, the Caribbean, and America. And the whole 2 weeks I was there, by the last week, Africans, the Senegalese kept saying, hey, you going to Goree Island yet? I'm like, hey man, you going to Goree Island yet? What are you doing? was excited about me seeing this place that is one of the most horrific places in history. He said, because we survived. It's a door. It happened. We want you to see the tyranny that happened there. But we're still here. We weren't broken. Okay? So they honor the past. All right? They didn't see it from a victim mentality. We're still here. And so we start talking about change. I want you to think about a model real quick, the change model. How do we change? People usually change because of a personal choice or a traumatic incident. Right? We have that revelation, new car crash. Woo, Lord, I'm changed, right? In jail, went in jail, hospital conversion, right? Change, traumatic incident, right? Change model. I want you to think about this, see if you get. Now, you guys see that? All right. So, see, do get the circle this way. So my C is my vision, and that's my belief system. What I hold to believe to be true, right? My perception, my belief system, beliefs. Based on my belief system, I do what? I act. See something, I believe a certain way, I act a certain way. And based on my action, I get a certain set of what? Results, right? This is what I get. Now, so if I want to change something, long-term traditional change, what do? We work it backwards. I want to get a different set of results, what do?
Act differently.
I act differently, right? I change the way I act, right? Right? Flex again. You about to leave? Okay. All right. I want him to go out that door. All right? And this represents 50,000 votes. So every time I lightly squeeze his shoulder, that's 50,000 votes. All right? I want him to go out that door. He wants to go to his seat. All right? So my hand is here. Go where you want to go until I apply force. Okay? All right, come back. Okay, thank you, sir. Give him a hand. Managers operate at this level. Managers change the action. Leaders operate at this level. You don't manage people. You manage inventory. You manage resources. People have to be led. All right? So if I want some short-term change, I go here. Because here are what I have, what I call my stakeholder needs. I need this, but I'm only getting this. So in here is what I call my pain gap. I'm unfulfilled. I want to close that gap. So as a manager, I just change the action. So I put the votes on him, he goes out the door. I release the votes. I'm no longer there to give him any type of reprimand or whatever. He's going to do what he wants to do. I changed his belief system. I said, look, you go outside the door, you got the CLE credits. I said, you got your full retirement, you got a second retirement, they're waiting outside for you right now. Let him go. Change his entire belief system. If I see it differently, then I can close the gap. Does that make sense? So Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this is because I don't expect you to be managers of diversity. I expect you to be leaders of diversity. You have to lead the change. That's why you're in here at almost 5 o'clock in the afternoon. When the rest of your buddies are having that cocktail, oh man, that was a good lunch. Right? You got to try to figure out how can I be the next change. That's why your bar association is doing this entire day of what you're doing today. It's been said it's being replicated around the state. That's why it's being done. You're in the lead category, you're in the manager category. Right? So in order to lead, you have to have trustworthiness, and that means providing through example. So you have to model diversity. All right? You have to check yourself constantly. And you have to influence others. We talked about the most empowering tool that we have is about the power of influence. Talk about your actions and your attitude. So leadership is important when we start talking about diversity, building trust, building legitimacy. It saves lives. It guides choices. It enhances productivity. It delivers results. And more important, what is still in principles, more importantly, it grows future leaders. That's what most of the communities that I work in suffer from. There's no succession plan of leadership. It's a brain drain. The communities are rough, and so people say, if I can get out of here, I'm out of here. There's no succession planning from bringing a guy in at 16, 17, 18 years old, put him in a steering committee meeting, teach him parliamentary process, teach him strategic planning, teach him how to do leadership, and so he takes it over in 5 years as part of that process. That's what you want to be doing. You want to have leaders, grow future leaders. That's the main thing. So we talk about skills and attitude. So name real quick, I'm not going to have to put it up on the board, but name real quick, what are some of the things, one word that you inspire, or a couple of words, when you think about the leader that you most admire, what do they possess? What are the qualities they possess?
Integrity.
Integrity. Courage. Courage. What else? Patience. Patience. What else? Respectful to others. What else?
They listen.
They listen.
They inspire.
They inspire. What else?
Capable.
Capable. What else?
Empower.
Empowered. What else?
Motivate.
Motivated.
Trustworthy.
Trustworthy. So, 6 confidence survey. This is what we looked at. This is what they found. Now let me ask you this question. Look at those words. Many of what you just gave. How many of us skill and how much are attitude? Honest and integrity, skill, attitude. Forward-looking, skill, attitude. Confident, skill, attitude. Skill. Now you gotta know how to do something, right? All right? I can be the most inspiring guy, but you say, I want you to go ahead and do bypass surgery, you're dead. I don't like that. All right? Inspiring. Intelligent. Fair-minded. Broad-minded. Supportive. You get the picture? Most of our organizations, we spend more time training on skill activities than we do on interpersonal activities. When I first became an instructor for the Department of Law Enforcement, the curriculum for interpersonal relations or human diversity was 16 hours. Every 4 years, law enforcement officer had to get that mandated certification. All right? It went from 16 hours to 8 hours. It went from 8 hours to 4 hours of diversity, 4 hours of traffic stop. Then it went to 4 hours. Then it went to at the agency's discretion. At a time when we become most diverse, we've cut back. And more often times than not, the officer is going to talk to somebody, relate to somebody, rather than use that high liability skill. Okay? So, you can answer that. So, what we're looking for in leadership to deal with accountability and to build trust is we're looking for character and confidence. I want the character. I want integrity. I want maturity. I want respect for others. But I also want a person who's confident. They don't have the knowledge and ability to do the job. If you put those two things together, you've got trustworthiness, and then that trust that is earned that is talked about comes about at the top of that. So, some real quick behaviors of high trust leaders, the character part of that pyramid. Talk straight, be honest. Tell the truth, don't manipulate or start the facts. You know, in cops, we got a lot of war stories. You know, it could have been one guy, 125 pounds. By the time we get back to the precinct, and he was 250, and I came out of the woodwork, and the story just get on and on and on. Like, look at that fish story, you know, about mine, you go brim. I'm telling you, like it was a, you know. Demonstrate respect. Respect the dignity of every person. One of the cornerstones of diversity. Human dignity and respect. Create transparency. You heard those words earlier. Tell the truth in a way people can verify, because they will verify. Right wrong. Apologize quickly. Make restitution where possible. Ego. Top 5 level, 5 leadership. Selfless. Give the credit to their others. Will, you did a great job. My team. I love a team that did a great job, but my team, oh, that was her idea. That was his idea. All right? And apologize quickly. That's hard to do with the ego. Hard to do, all right? Show loyalty. Give credit to others. Speak out about people as if they were present. Well, that's a good one. Wouldn't say it about faith, would you? Right? Behaviors of competence. Deliver results. I can talk all inspirational talk. If I can't deliver results at the end of the day, I'm out. Get better. Constantly improving upon yourself. Sharpen your saw. Confront reality. Tackle issues head on, even the undiscussables. The fact that you're here talking about diversity issues, contentious topics. I was at the University of North Florida last year with Sheriff Glover and then Sheriff Rutherford and the former and the president of the University. We had what we called it was courageous conversation, civil discourse. And 150 people came out that night in the rain and the cold and talk about these issues that we're not supposed to discuss. All right, but guess what? They come back up again. If you don't discuss them here, they're going to come back up again. Clarify expectations and practice accountability. Take responsibility for the results. When something happens on my watch, I don't care, and I have to trust several people. They put papers in front of me all day long. I'm signing. I have to trust that they verified and done their research. I'll put a paper in front of the U.S. attorney. He may glance it, but he's signing. He's got to come on me all day long. If that result is incorrect, if my assessment was wrong, wasn't my team member, if I'm heading that section, I'll take responsibility. Both sides. Now, we take corrective practice to figure out how to make that happen again, but ultimately, if I sign off on it, I own it. I own it. Now, the behaviors that balance both character and competence. Listen first, listen before you speak. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Native American talking stick. I have an issue that I want to discuss with you, and I'm going to tell you what this particular issue is. And this is my point of view. I mean, this is my opinion. This is my point. I'm going to get a talking stick to you. You hold a talking stick. Now, before she gives me her countervailing or her point of view, she's going to ask me, let me be sure that I understood what you're trying to convey, because message conveyed is not always message received. Right? Let me give you an example of that with Mr. Diversity. Several years ago, while on the road, I'm traveling. I go to the gym to work out in the hotel. First time in the elliptical machine, right? So I'm on the elliptical machine. I'm just, program is running. Go. So this is pretty good. Low impact, pretty good. It says reverse direction. I turned around on the other. I said, this don't feel right. Something wrong with this. People come into the gym looking like, what's he doing? But nobody says anything. Right? Oh, I didn't know it. You meant to turn the other way. True story. That's a true story. Now you're going to question everything in my presentation. Keep your commitment. Say what you're going to do, then do what you said you were going to do. If I can't deliver, I'm going to tell you I can't do it. When Maria called me, she just said, well, can you come do this? I was like, let me think about it. I asked about several different types of questions. I try to undercommit and overdeliver. I don't go to everything. Undercommit. I'll make, number one, am I going to have an impact? I have about 5 checklists on my desk. When somebody calls me with a request, community, mission, whatever. Number one, is it part of my mission? Number 2, will it detract from my established priorities? Number 3, can I devote the level of expertise and time to be successful? And number 4, will it bear any measurable fruit? If 1 through 3 is yes and number 4 is no, I don't do it. And the measurable fruit is not necessarily empirical data. Sometimes it's that this needs to be said. This needs to be heard. I need this. Okay? But I go through those series of questions. So, and then once I say I want to be here, I come. Do what you say you're going to do. Extend trust. Demonstrate propensity to trust. Extend to those who have earned it. You heard that today. It has to be earned. You got to put something in the bank. And extend conditions to those who are earning it. And don't withhold trust because risks are involved. Sometimes I have to send people out to do things. I don't know if they're going to do it the way I'm going to do it, but I got to let them go. All right? So the question for leadership is you have to ask those critical questions. What do you do? Peter Drucker said this, that the organizations are a social organization. And Peter Drucker said when he was doing a service matter, he went to the top executive and said, what do you do? And they said, well, I'm doing research and development. I have about $6 billion over this. I'm this, and I'm this. He went through the line and he said, you're all wrong. You develop your people. People first. Unless you develop your people, you don't have an organization. So whatever you're doing in your bar, whatever you're doing in your practice, you have to develop your people. Because talent is never enough. Talent is never enough. There are a lot of talented people, but talent is never enough. You gotta have a belief that lifts your talent. You gotta have passion that energizes your talent. You gotta have initiative that activates your talent, focus that directs it, preparation that positions it, practice that sharpens it, perseverance that sustains it, courage, somebody said, that tests your talent, teachability that expands it, character that protects it, relationship that influences it. The same words keep popping up again. Responsibility that strengthens it, and teamwork that multiplies your talent. So the 8 conditions for growth to occur when we start talking about building trust and accountability in your organization and community is that, first of all, you have to have the satisfaction with the status quo. I don't like the way things are. It can be better. Be willing to ask a hard question and accept the results, even if they're unpleasant, uncomfortable. If you don't want to know, don't ask. Ask a hard question. Don't skirt around the issue. Go deeper. Why do we keep having this recurring issue on race? Why? One of the answers is racism is tied to economics. That's why it was created in the first place. To create an economic system. A class system. So if you keep dealing up here, you'll never get to the real issue. Ask the deeper question, the hard questions. Vision of where we need to go. Somebody has to be the visionary. You have to look into the open field and say, it's not there, but what can be there? Process by which to get there. Nothing frustrates you worse. All these ideas, all this stuff about diversity. I'm going back to my organization. Guess what? How are we going to make it happen? Don't know. All right? The will to make it happen. Not this will, your will to make it happen. Action steps. Planning. Evaluation. Review. Where are we making it right? Where are we getting it wrong? I heard the bar president talking about earlier today about 68 people drilled down into what's happening, looking at these four or five key areas of what's happening in the legal marketplace. And a recommitment to the journey. People get tired. You got to re-up, you got to replenish, you got to retool. Okay? So I'm almost there. I'm almost there. So it takes heart. Seabiscuit, it takes heart. Depression era. People depressed, people out of work, nothing going on. People were looking for a champion, they were looking for a story. Old beat up little quarter horse, broke down jockey, gets pitted against one of the biggest races in America. He goes against War Apple, this beautiful stallion, probably almost a third more in his size, bred in the finest stables, everything is going for it. And they said this is the race of the century between these two horses. No way Little Seabiscuit can beat War Admiral. No way. But they discounted something. They forgot to tell Seabiscuit. He didn't see himself as being small. It's a matter of perspective. The other thing that went wrong, he likes to come from behind, so his rider told him when he broke his leg and said, look, I can't ride. I'm going to train this other champion jockey to ride my horse. Well, let me tell you something. He has to be challenged in the right way, so don't let him break too early. He likes to come from behind. If you let him break too early, he won't see any competition and he'll just give up. Let him break from behind. And then he said, in the final turn, he said, get him eye to eye, get him into position with his horse, with War Admiral. Let him look him in the eye, let loose, he'll do the rest. So you have to have disciplined people, disciplined thought in the right positions. Challenge them in the right way, give them perspective, and turn them loose, don't do what they do. Winning, Joe Torre said, you don't have to have a World Series ring to be a winner. A winner is somebody who goes out there every day and exhausts himself trying to get something accomplished. May not get the bar award, may not get this, but I'm getting up every day doing this. Dean Smith said, patience and planning. There's no shortcuts. We live in a world of shortcuts. I want it quick, I want it fast, I want it microwave, I want it tweeted. No shortcut to building a winning team, to earning trust with the community, to transform the culture of an organization. There's no shortcuts to it. We taught players not to dwell on the consequences of failure. Integrity first, core values, character with the competence. I had the pleasure of working through a ministry with this young man in Tampa with our extended reentry program, Tony Dungy. And Tony Dungy came into Tampa. He walked into the room, into the Bucks locker room. He said, "Good morning, Tony. I'm going to treat you like a man. This is the opposite I'm going to talk all day. This is my women's passion. Those are women's training. I'm not going to use vanity, and these are my expectations." That was it. He said, I want to show them that it can be done differently. I don't have to yell. I don't have to be profane. And check this out. One of his players one day had a commitment to give a speech at a high school, at a school in Tampa Bay. Didn't show up. Sunday, he benched him. He said, this is a game. If I can't count on you off the field to do what's supposed to be done in the community, I can't count on you in your position in the field. Ride the bench. It's a game. Okay? So, do it differently. No excuses, no explanations. And most importantly, let the world know that once upon a time you were here. Whatever you do, leave a legacy. Your work, your mark, your creativity, your perseverance, your ideas. It may not be last on the skyline, but you will have an impact on what you are doing in this particular community. So I applaud you. Keep doing what you're doing. And any way that I can come back over here and work with the team again, I'll be happy to do it. Thank you so much.